of Advance at UNM, and we appreciate you taking the time to join us. We're really pleased today to have Juliet Kinkade-Black and Donna Lucero from All Faiths Children's Advocacy Center with us. And before I turn this over to them, I want to say they're here thanks to a suggestion from a faculty colleague. So please remember that we do take requests. And if you're aware of other people in the community we should be engaging to help us all stagger through this, please let me know and we'll do what we can. And with no further ado, I will turn it over to Donna and Juliet. First, thanking them very much for joining us today. They have agreed we can record this, so if you have to leave early, you will have the opportunity to catch up. And there will also be time for questions. And so please feel free to type questions in the chat as you come up with them, and then you'll also be able to ask them live after their presentation. So Donna and Juliet, thank you.
Thanks, Julia. We are excited to be here. As Julia mentioned, I'm Donna Lucero from All Faiths Children's Advocacy Center. All Faiths has been in the community for a very long time. We are actually turning 65 this year, so we're super excited about that. I spend a lot of my time doing training around the community specific to trauma and the impact of trauma. And obviously our pandemic is, I would venture a guess, many of you would consider a traumatic event in the lives of all of us. So we'll spend our time together focusing a little bit on that, a little bit on trauma. I'm excited to be here, and I'm excited to be here with Juliet, my co-trainer. We'll be spending the next hour and a half with you all. We're slated until 12:30. So hopefully that's what everybody has in mind. And I'll let Juliet introduce herself if you would.
Sure. Thanks, Donna. My name is Juliet Kinkade-Black, and I'm the Director of Clinical Services at All Faiths. And Donna and I are kind of the dynamic duo together. Donna trains all of our staff, and then I try to guide them in a forward-moving direction as we are working with kids and families who have experienced scary things in their lives. And we're really excited to be here with you guys today because COVID-19 has been a scary experience in all of our lives, and it has really made existence pretty stressful, whether you have children or in your home or children in your lives or in your community. You are seeing the impact that the pandemic and the resulting shutdown have had. And we are definitely seeing that at All Faiths. So as much as we are here to share some things with you today, we really hope that we can have a conversation with you. So please feel free to interrupt us if you have questions or feedback, or if something you hear today kind of sparks an idea. Donna and I really love to hear from you. We learn from you as much as we hope you're going to learn from us today.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Hi, Armando, by the way. Good to see you. Good to see you. So we have a slide presentation, which I'll pull up now and share screen. We'll share a couple of videos throughout our process today. We've got a lot to share with you and not a ton of time. So we're hoping we can get to all of it. We're going to focus a little bit on kind of a broad definition of trauma. And then I want to make it a little bit more specific to COVID and the pandemic. And then Juliet's going to take a chunk of time in the middle there and talk about, really make some connections around parenting and caregiving and what that might look like, and sprinkle in some of our nurtured heart approach, which we are very passionate about. And then the last third of our time together is we're hoping to really focus on giving some ideas and some strategies and just emphasizing the importance of taking good care of yourself during this whole time. So we'll plug all those three pieces together and give you the full package. So I'm going to go ahead and go in and pull up the slides so that we can dive in. And I was mentioning while people were getting on is we're not ashamed to grovel to have folks put their cameras on, because we would really love to see faces. It's good for you to see each other's faces. We're going to emphasize really the importance of relationship. And I can see the majority of you in my setup. I have multiple screens going on, so I can see the majority of you in my screen. And that really helps me to be able to see human faces, even if we are virtual. And we'd all rather be in person. guaranteed, no doubt. But since we're virtual, it helps to see your faces for sure.
And if you have kids in the background or animals in the background, we're here for it.
Absolutely. I don't care if your hair is combed, if you're in your jammies, none of that matters to me. I just would love to see your faces. So appreciate that. What we're going to focus on today is really peace at home, parenting through the pandemic. And Juliet and I have already introduced ourselves. So I'm going to skip through this one. All faiths, and I think Juliet would agree, we're happy to talk offline if anybody wants more information about what we do at All Faiths, the services that we offer. Although our title is All Faiths, that we are not faith-based in that sense. We serve all faiths, all families, all beliefs, and all forms of diversity. And really kind of the common denominator in the folks that we serve at All Faiths is trauma, adversity, things that our families and our kids have experienced, and our job is to help them move through that and heal. And really move towards this next concept that we'll take a couple of minutes just to emphasize is this notion of resiliency. And resiliency, there's lots of research around all of this, and many of you have probably heard about it. And we'll actually revisit this at the end of our presentation today, is the importance of resilience. And resilience is not really something that we are born with. We're not born resilient. Resilience is something we develop, and we develop based on our experiences. And I think you would all agree that our experience under COVID and a pandemic and the loss and the grief that is associated with our experience over the last year has definitely given us all the opportunity to develop some level of resiliency in various shapes or forms with our kids, our families, our loved ones, our work. And what we know based on the research is that generally people that are resilient tend to have these three qualities. One, a staunch acceptance of reality, sort of this notion, this ability to say, this is what is. Here is our situation. And it doesn't mean it doesn't suck. It doesn't mean it's not horrible. It doesn't mean this isn't really bad. And there's so many, traumatic things going on. But it's this ability to say, this is what it is, and to avoid denying it. That's one of the aspects of a resilient person. And then another one is this deep belief that life is meaningful. Underneath all of this, there is something to be learned, something to be gained, some silver lining, some deeper meaning underneath the adversity, the trauma, the difficulty that is on the surface. And then, and I think this is really a reflection of the last year, right? This uncanny ability to improvise, to roll with the flow, to take things as they come, to be able to, the word of the year has been pivot, right? How many of you have used that word or heard that word a time or two? We've been pivoting all year. This uncanny ability to pivot, to improvise, to shift gears, to roll with the flow. And all of these come together in this ability to really bounce back from hardship. It's not denying, it's not ignoring, it's not minimizing the hardship, but this ability to bounce back using these three qualities ideally. And, I think we all have varying degrees of each one depending on what our situation is, like this kind of equalizer, right? Acceptance, meaning, improvise, and we all move along this flow around these three areas of resilience. So again, we'll revisit that at the end as we tie together all of these concepts. Now, I would like to start with just defining trauma. As I mentioned before, I do a lot of training in the community with our agency in and out of state about trauma and the impact of trauma. So I'd like for us to just define or give you anyway, not a set in stone definition, but something for you to think about as we define trauma. And a lot of times I'm going to shift gears to a video. When we talk about trauma, sometimes folks will immediately, the visions that come to your mind oftentimes are abuse or violence or a car crash. These sort of are immediate things that might come to mind. But I would invite you to broaden your definition a bit when we think about trauma. And trauma is really about not necessarily an event itself, but our response to it. So I'm going to share with you this little graphic that I created, which is a kind of a working definition that I use or would invite you to use or think about when we think about what does trauma mean. And I have to click a bunch of clicks in Zoom to get the best quality video. So you should see something that looks like a blackboard. Okay, here we go. Brief graphic definition of trauma. How about those graphics, right? Fancy. It's a software called Doodly, which I am very excited about. So bad things that happen in life that have a potentially lasting impact. Anyone agree that COVID pandemic might fit under that definition? Bad things that happen in life that have a potentially lasting impact. So what I hope to emphasize around that particular definition is that the way any one individual defines or experiences trauma is very different and completely dependent upon that individual and their experience. I'm shifting back to the slide. Completely dependent on that individual and their experience. So even when we think about the pandemic or when we think about COVID, all of us have made sense out of, metabolized, digested, moved through, or are in this experience of COVID very differently. How we've made sense out of it, what's impacted us most, what we've been able to roll with a little bit easier. So trauma is an individualized experience. And it's not, we could have folks who have had the same type of trauma, like physical abuse or sexual abuse or witness to domestic violence or pandemic, right? Any of those things, very similar events, very different responses. And that is contingent upon all sorts of variables, intersections of who we are, our cultural background, our family connections, our access to resources, our access to support, our location, our geography potentially is going to impact how we make sense out of our experiences, our traumatic experiences, any experience really, but we're talking about trauma and stress now. So this broad definition of trauma is what I would like to invite you to consider as we move forward and you're thinking about COVID, pandemic, but also trauma in general. Then one metaphor that I like to really talk about and ask folks to consider is this metaphor of a pond. And, you know, we don't have much water here. We were just talking about that with, I think it was Francesca, who was missing the water from where she is from. We don't have a lot of water here. But if you can imagine a time that you were at a lake or a pond and you see a pebble hit the pond, what happens, right? Creates a ripple. So I would invite you to consider that the pebble, if you imagine the pebble is a traumatic event. The pebble is a traumatic event. When the pebble hits the pond, it creates a ripple. Now the ripple is the trauma response. That is the ongoing, potentially long-lasting impact. The pebble will eventually hit the bottom of the pond, which means that event in time will end. An incident of physical abuse, an incident of sexual abuse, the pandemic will end at a point in time. But the response, the trauma response, just like the ripple, has the potential to continue indefinitely. I'm sure someone has measured how far a ripple goes, scientifically. But if you just imagine it goes out indefinitely. So, and that's oftentimes what we see on the surface. That's what we see in behavior. That's what we reflect in our behavior. The response to the traumatic event is the ripple. And I talk a lot about that in terms of regulation and self-regulation and regulatory tools, is how you manage the ripples. How do we manage our big feelings associated with that? How do we manage our behavioral responses to that? The ripples in the pond. And I know, the folks that we serve at All Faiths, the kids and families we serve at All Faiths, and many of us, I mean, just based on numbers, we know 1 in 8 kids have experienced enough trauma to have a potentially lasting impact. 1 in 8. If you just count the number of folks on this particular training, I know that many people have experienced significant trauma in their lives. So what often happens when you use this metaphor is it's usually not one pebble that hits the pond. It's a bunch of pebbles hitting the pond. And usually with the kids and families we serve, a barrage of pebbles that are hitting the pond. And the pandemic, COVID, all of those things are pebbles in the pond. And then you can't really tell which ripple goes with which pebble and what response goes with what event, right? It's a pond full of ripples. And it's very hard to make sense out of what someone's experience is. You can't distinguish what's coming from where. And I think this happens to all of us, but particularly when we're working with kids and families who've experienced trauma, part of our job is helping manage the ripples. Part of taking good care of yourself is figuring out how you manage your own ripples, whether it's in response to traumatic event like, childhood trauma or COVID and the pandemic. So that's one way I would invite you to just kind of think about trauma in regards to this pond. Now I want to spend just a tiny bit of time talking about a little bit of brain science and how this actually works in our daily functioning, right? When we're thinking about this trauma response. So when we as human beings experience a potentially either a perceived or a real threat, perceived or real is a really important point in all of this. It doesn't have to be something that's actually happening. It could be something that our brain perceives as a threat, or something that is queued up from our past that our brain cannot distinguish between now and a long time ago. And there's a whole other training about that, so I'm not going to spend too much more time on that. But the way that our brain responds to threat is very low in our brain, called our stress response system, or our survival brain, the lizard brain, fear response. There's lots of words for it. I'm going to refer to it as the stress response system or the survival brain. Very low in our brain, kind of in the back and the bottom. And it is designed to be, it's not dumb, but it's super limited, right? And it's brilliantly designed that way, to be limited in its options. Its sole focus is survival. And historically, for thousands upon thousands of years of evolution, our survival brain has done a really good job about keeping us alive as a species. We don't have lions about to eat us around in every corner, but that's our history, right? Our evolutionary history. Now our stressors look differently, but our survival brain, our stress response system, is designed to respond in the same way: fight, flight, or freeze. Very limited options. If you're about to be eaten by a lion, you don't really need your thinking brain, which lies up at the top, to pull out a map and a flashlight and plan an escape route, right? You just need to run, fight, or play dead. One of those three options are your best bet for survival. Our system has not evolved past that in terms of fight, flight, or freeze. It just looks differently how we respond to those. Key point around this, however, is that when our survival brain kicks in, low in the brain, our thinking brain up at the top pretty much turns off. And this upside down triangle that you see here, this comes from the work of Dr. Bruce Perry, the triangle does anyway. His is much fancier than mine. Mine's a simple drawing with some highlighters and a marker. But the idea is you have this upside down triangle that represents our brain. The pointy part at the bottom, the pink and the yellow there going into the green, are lower parts of our brain where our stress response system lies. Emotions are in there, called it the limbic system, up towards the green part there. In general, that lower part of the brain helps us with survival, right? It responds to threat. That's where our big emotions are. The top part of our brain, that blue part where the flat part of the triangle is our thinking brain, our cognitive, our prefrontal cortex, fancy word, is up at the top. And that's where we we make good decisions, and, we plan for retirement, and we know cause and effect and delay of gratification and impulse control, empathy. These higher, more sophisticated executive functions are up at the top. Important part of the way our survival brain works is that when it is activated at the bottom part of our brain, we're focused on survival, our thinking brain is pretty much turned off. It's pretty much inaccessible, which means it's really, really difficult, if not impossible, to make really good, thought out decisions when we're focused on survival. And I'm going to tie this into COVID in just a second, but it is specific to traumatic events like childhood trauma, things like that. Daily stressors. When you get stressed out at work and your fight, flight, freeze response kicks in, it's really hard to make good decisions, no matter how loud your boss tells you what your directive is, or how many times they tell you what your directive is, or what they threaten you with. None of that is getting in until the lower part of your brain is regulated. You feel safe, calm, and grounded. Then your thinking brain is accessible. And a nice way to think about that is, I'm making sure I'm thoughtful about the time, is this concept called flip your lid. And this comes from the work of Dr. Dan Siegel. And I would love to just be able to walk through flip your lid with all of you if you would be willing to do that. Does that feel okay if we walk through flip your lid? This will require a little bit of participation. I thank you, Maya, for the thumbs up. Okay, let's see. I'm going to stop share so that I can see all of you. And I'm going to relate this all to COVID in just a second. There's a method to where I'm going with this. Okay, so I would love to see everyone. Those of you that do not have your cameras on, I hope you're with us and you walk through this with me. Again, this is Flip Your Lid from the work of Dr. Dan Siegel. So what I'm going to ask everyone to do is just hold your right hand up in front of your camera so we can all see each other's right hand. Now, your hand is going to represent a model of your brain and the way our survival brain, our stress response system works. Now, those of you that are like me in our products of the 80s, when I say this, you tell me what you want to say immediately after. So if I say, this is your brain.
This is your brain on drugs.
Thank you, Juliet. Absolutely. I see the smiles too, because we were like hardwired with that commercial in the 80s about not using drugs in a fried egg. And it was super lame, but I can't help but want to be compelled to say that when I say this is your brain. So this is going to represent your brain, but it's not going to be the kind of brain that's on drugs, right? This is just going to represent how our stress response system works. Now, if you think about that little upside down triangle that I showed you just a few moments ago, if we use this as a model of our brain, your wrist and this kind of cushy part of your hand right here are going to represent the lower part of your brain, which is your brain stem. And your brain stem, keeps your heart beating and your blood flowing and your air in your lungs and body temperature, etc. That's lower in the brain. Take your thumb and put it on the inside of your hand here. Your thumb is going to represent what's called your amygdala, your lizard brain. That's a lot of where the stress response system lies. Not specifically, it's much more complex than that, but for our purposes, it works. So all of this part right here, if you think about your thumb on the inside, your brainstem, let's throw emotions in there too. Feelings are in there. Now roll your fingers over your thumb. Great, looks good. This part of your hand right here is now going to represent your cortex, your thinking brain up at the top. Your thinking brain is actually the last part of your brain to fully mature. It doesn't fully mature till pushing 30 for boys and mid 20s for girls. So this takes a long time to mature, long time to cook. So the way our brain kind of functions is that we cruise around about our day. We're a bunch of brains bumping into each other, right? And, I'm cruising about my day and I bump into Miguel. And I see Miguel, and for whatever reason, Miguel and men with gray hair are a trauma cue for me. For whatever reason, a long time ago, bad things happened, and it brings up all that stuff from the past for me. I have no way to predict that. But when I see Miguel, I have that trauma cue. My stress response system activates at the lower part of my brain, and I flip my lid. Everyone flip your lid. Perfect. When I flip my lid, my stress response system is activated, and my thinking brain pretty much is inaccessible, pretty much turns off. So I do something to regulate that lower part of the brain, pattern, repetitive, rhythmic, relational. I'll get to that in a little bit. Do some activity to regulate that lower part of my brain, my stress response system, and my thinking brain comes back on. Now I have access to cause and effect, making good decisions, delay of gratification, right? All that's up here, executive functions. Then I cruise along a little bit more about my day and I see Ellen. And for whatever reason, Ellen pisses me off. And when Ellen pisses me off, I flip my lid. My stress response system activates. My thinking brain is pretty much inaccessible. I'm driven by survival, fight, flight, or freeze. When I do something pattern, repetitive, rhythmic, relational, I regulate that lower part of my brain and my thinking brain comes back online. Cruise about my day. That's in general the way our stress response system is designed to work. It turns on when I need it. It turns off when I don't. we human beings are we struggle a little bit with the on and off thing, right? We like to hold on to stress. We like to hold on to that activation. We trap it inside our bodies. And then what you find is people who tend to be a little bit activated, their stress response system is kind of always a little bit turned on. So when I run into Miguel or Ellen pisses me off, I don't have far to go to flip my lid completely. And when I regulate, I don't go all the way back to baseline. I stay a little tuned up, ready for a threat, always on guard, right? And with continual activation like that, you run the risk of having an impact on your physical health, your emotional health, your mental well-being. All of those things are potentially impacted with that level of activation of our stress response system. It's not designed to stay on. It was designed to turn on when we need it, turn off when we don't. If you think about other animals in our world, they don't do that, right? If they're about to be eaten by a lion and they escape the lion, it's not like they're worried about the lion that almost ate them, or they stay thinking about it for the, however long indefinitely. Ooh, that was a close call. I almost died. That lion almost ate me, right? It's over. They're done with it. They move on. They do something physically, usually, to discharge, which is a horrible word, but discharge that energy and move through that cycle. A whole other thing. So that's flip your lid. And it's really helpful in just kind of having a sense of what your brain does, how it works, and that it's doing exactly what it's designed to do to keep us alive. So then you might be thinking, well, what the heck does this have to do with COVID, right? I thought this was a workshop about parenting in the pandemic. Where are we going with this, right? Well, let me tell you. I'm going to jump right back in here. Juliet, feel free to add anything if you feel I'm missing something, for sure.
You're doing great.
Thank you for the affirmation. I appreciate that. Okay, let me pull the slide back up. And I'm gonna, sorry for all the clicks, make this applicable to our COVID experience. And I think you will all relate to this in one way, shape, or form. So let's pull up this activating picture, right? When you see that, lots of feelings are associated with that, I'm sure. So what does this have to do with COVID, right? Think about that activation of our survival brain and our stress response system. And we're like at a year anniversary today when really the hard news hit about shutdowns and no kids are not going back to school. Our world turned upside down a year ago today. No doubt, year anniversary. So think back to that time when we first got the news about the shutdown and, restaurants are going to be closed and kids can't go to school and everything was happening all at once. If you recall at that time, what was one of the first things that you recall that a vast majority of people, especially in the United States, went out and did? One of the first things people did right when the news of the shutdown hit. Any thoughts? You can unmute yourself, put it in the chat.
Bought all the toilet paper.
Bought all the toilet paper. Thank you, Ellen. Yes. Gajillions of people went out and bought toilet paper. In fact, let me shift gears because this is the extra thing that I wanted to add in today. Let me show you this. So tons of people went out and bought, a buttload of toilet paper. No pun intended, right? They went out and bought a bunch of toilet paper. So here's what this looked like. Now I went to Walmart. It would be a year ago tomorrow, the Saturday after the news hit. And I wasn't going to buy toilet paper, but let me tell you the story. I went out, I don't know what I needed. And I went to Walmart and here's what I saw that just blew me away. Now, I tried to not show any faces here. It might not let me show it. It's giving me some kind of weird error message. Hang tight. If it doesn't let me show it, I will tell you about it. But it's better if you could see it. Yeah, it keeps booting it out. It's not going to let me show it. Let me try one other thing. I went to Walmart that day, that Saturday, and I was astounded with what I saw. One other way, and if it doesn't work in 10 seconds, I'm gonna quit.
Donna, you are really modeling the human ability to adapt.
Thank you, Juliet. I appreciate that. Can you all see that?
Yes.
Okay, let's check this out. So this is the Saturday after the, you know, the news of the shutdown hit, and here's what I experienced. If you recognize anyone, just pretend you don't know them. Here we go. Excuse me, sir. Excuse me, Anna. Okay, that was the line for toilet paper at Walmart.
Wow.
Right? And I couldn't even keep going because I couldn't get through like the rest of the line. That was the line for toilet paper. So then you're thinking, okay, tell me, what does this have to do with what we're talking about? If we think about that activation of the stress response system, lower part of the brain, fight, flight, or freeze. We all got this news that was definitely threatening, right? It was a threat to our survival. A microscopic virus is threatening our survival. Now, I can't explain exactly why we chose toilet paper, but for whatever reason, a whole bunch of people, mostly in the United States, correlated obtaining as much toilet paper as possible with our survival. If I get as much toilet paper as I can, there's a better chance I'm going to survive this, right? For whatever reason, we associated toilet paper with survival. Can't explain exactly why we picked that, but that's what we picked. So people went out and what? They fought for toilet paper. There's videos of people actually throwing blows over packages of Charmin. And then we hoarded up as much as we could possibly get of toilet paper. Again, I believe as a reflection of this is how I'm going to survive. Now that's lower part of the brain, fight, flight, or freeze. If our thinking brains, we had had access to those, just and the collective we, I don't know if anyone went out and bought toilet paper, and I'm not, you know, it is what it is. It makes perfect sense. If we had had access to our thinking brain in that moment, we could have probably told ourselves, you know what? I'm not going to die without toilet paper. Thousands of years of evolution, people have not had toilet paper. It's a relatively new invention, right? Will it be gross? Probably. Will we have to improvise? Sure. It's not going to be pleasant. Absolutely. But we're not going to die without toilet paper. But many people were driven by that lower part of the brain focused on survival. And I started to think, especially when I saw that line, I was like, shoot, maybe I should buy some toilet paper. Like I started to be like, whoa, what's going on here? Maybe that is a real thing and we need toilet paper to survive. So you can see that contagion around that too, driven by that lower part of the brain stress response system. And when we think about it like that, it makes perfect sense. Even things like, you know, people struggling with wearing a mask and not wearing a mask, and the really big emotions around all of this, the really big emotions with the restrictions and things like that. I have to wonder how much of that is lower part of the brain, right? Threat to survival. And then we see the ripples on the surface in terms of people's responses and reactions, whatever that might look like. So that's how I think we can relate a lot of our COVID experiences. Maybe think about that for yourself too, is how we've managed and maneuvered so many adversities during COVID and how much of our responses may have been driven by that survival brain at the lower part of it's in its functions. It does exactly what it needs to do in this perceived threat that we're all swimming in right now. Does that feel like that lands? Does that make sense? If any of you bought toilet paper, you're going to probably have it until 2025 at least, but we'll all come to you if you have a garage full of toilet paper that we can all access. All right, should we move it? Any questions or comments or feedback? Well, this might be a pausing point while I switch gears to Juliet's portion. Any thoughts, comments, feedback? I'm taking the long virtual pause. Okay.
All right.
Here we go, Juliet.
So thanks, Donna. Donna has done a really great job of, I think, describing what was going on in my brain a year ago today and in the year that has followed. And in the last year, as I'm talking with families, as all of us at All Faiths are meeting with, we see almost 3,000 children and families a year at All Faiths. So in the last year, we've seen close to 3,000 children and families. Across the board, I have heard the same concerns raised again and again. And so I can imagine that many of you share these same concerns. So let's just talk about them and get them out on the table. And if you don't hear your specific concerns about your health and safety, your children's health and safety, I invite you to add them to the chat. We're gonna, put all of those elephants in the room. So one of the big ones I hear is my children are not getting enough socialization, or they're not getting any socialization. How many of you would say that you have shared that concern at some point in the last year? Yes, thank you for those of you who are raising your hands. Absolutely. And that is I don't know if it makes you feel any better. It makes me feel better to know that that's a shared concern. Like, I'm not the only person who's worrying about that. Everybody I know is also worrying about that. Another concern I hear every single day is my kids are spending too much time on screens. They log in during yes, thanks, Marigold, I see your thumbs up. They log on at the start of the day, they're on classroom Zoom all day long, and then they get off at 12 or 2 or 3 and they do video games, or they chat with their grandparents on the iPad, or they watch TV all day because I still have to work. I'm over here on my own screen trying to work, and that's what I've got available for them. Here's a big one, and I don't know, I guess I'm making some assumptions about all of you guys here today, but I am telling myself that it might feel a little bit more weighted for you than even for most families, that our kids are not learning enough, or they're not learning anything. How many of you guys are worrying about how, the content of their learning? Yes, thank you. I see some thumbs up. Absolutely. I have 2 nephews and a niece who are doing all of their online schooling, and every day their mom has a message for me, or calls me up and says they're failing school, they're not understanding what's happening, the teacher has given up on them, this is a disaster. And I would say that we see that conversation really centered in our state right now, as we are struggling to figure out, what are we doing about returning to school? I can see that there's a lot of pressure to get back into the classroom, really based on this fear that our kids are falling behind. We hear that a lot. And then kind of underlying all of that is the giant, maybe the first pebble that got thrown into the pond. And I would say that pebble is more like a giant boulder. There is just this fear about the virus. Are my kids going to get sick? Am I going to get sick? Are my kids scared that people are going to get sick? How do I talk to them about all of this? And I see that, Donna, would you read me what's in the chat? I'm not going to be able to get to it.
Sorry. Yes,
that's all right.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
I'm slacking a little bit.
No, you're doing great.
Marigold said the day isn't structured enough with different activities, which makes it hard for my child to make it through the day in a regulated way. I think she means regulated.
Yes, she's nodding. Yes,
She's
thank
nodding.
you.
Okay.
Absolutely. And I would say that structure that you're looking for, Marigold, probably you typically in non-pandemic times, you see that with in-person schooling and friends and activities that your children go to during the day. So here is the thing. Yes, Donna.
Hyro, I hope I said that correctly, talked about graduate students who are parents, and then their struggles with their schedules, and that's an issue for sure.
Absolutely. I can't imagine trying to go to school and be a parent at the same time right now. I can't imagine doing anything and being a parent right now, which I guess is what I hope you hear at the end of this. being a parent at all right now, you are doing a great job. You are doing good enough just to be existing with your kids right now and figuring it out one day at a time. So here's what I want to say about those concerns you have about your children. And this is not just like Juliet's words of wisdom. This is what all of the developmental scientists, our best child welfare experts are saying. If you are having these concerns about your children, that they're not getting enough socialization, that they're spending too much time on the screens, that they are not learning enough or being productive enough, and that they're scared, then you have those same concerns about yourself. You yourself, as an adult in the world, are probably not getting enough socialization, that you are spending too much time on your screens. And I saw many of you nodding and saying, yes, my whole day is on the screen, that you're describing my life right now, that you are not being productive enough, you're not learning enough, you're not working enough, that you yourself are scared about the virus. And we have just heard from Donna what that fear does to our brains. And so you might have layered another thought in there, which is, oh my God, I'm constantly, my lid is flipped. I'm walking around like I'm being chased by a lion. What is that doing to me, to my nervous system, to my relationships with others? So I'm here to say that is all completely normal and expected and pretty much universal at this point. So I just love this picture. So let's all take a moment to look at this happy couple. This baby and this mama, their mirror neurons are pinging off of each other. They are just really enjoying having a moment of connection. Here's where I drop some cold hard facts that I hope will kind of reassure you guys and maybe start to bring your lids back online. Hello, young person who is with Armando Bustamante. This is my favorite part, is seeing kiddos. Hi there. So we have heard a lot this morning from Donna about the ways that adaptation is a human miracle. And challenge is actually how we grow. If we didn't have challenge, then we wouldn't figure out how to get better and do the next thing. And the pandemic actually gives us a great opportunity to see adaptation at work. There has been a lot of talk at our agency in the last week as we make sure that all of our staff are getting vaccinated. And I understand that you guys are starting to be able to get vaccinated as well, which really reassures me. And I just want to celebrate that so hard with you guys. But the question was, at least on our side, is this really like something good? Because that vaccine got created super fast, like less than a year. Was there really science in there, or was that just, you know, some people? Oh, great job, Anime. I'm super excited for you. So the real concern was, how solid was the science if this vaccine was able to roll out in a year? Because I thought it takes about 10 years to get a vaccine out. So this is where adaptation and challenge really came together. We had a big challenge that was pretty global, and that allowed us as humans to figure out some new problem solving, to come together in a way we never had before. We didn't need to come up with a vaccine prior to this. And that's a really great example of the ways challenge can help us to pivot, with that new word, just meet the challenge in a new way. The other thing that I really want, when I first heard this, it was like a balm for my soul. It was a reminder that human development and developmental science are growing and changing in the face of challenge as well. So there was a time when group learning was not the norm. And in fact, parents and families who had to send children to daycare or to preschool or kindergarten, they were really, really shamed, because that was not seen as what was healthy and normal for your kids. The concerns were, it's going to interrupt attachment, it's going to impede learning and development, you're going to have a group of kids who are super needy and clingy, or super cold and distant. This is like the worst thing you could possibly do for children. And that was really how we talked about group learning when it first started, but it was a necessity because moms needed to go into the workplace for the first time. Women were in the workplace, and what were we supposed to do with those children? They couldn't like hang out strapped to mom's backs while they were working during the day. And they were right. In the beginning, it was a pebble in the pond for those children and for those families who had to take their kids and put them in group learning away from the home. And then human adaptation saved the day, and we discovered, oh, kids learn differently this way, but they don't learn worse. They learn some things faster, like how to share and how to interact with peers. And they learn some things slower, like how to self-regulate, because they had spent all of their time with one primary caregiver. At this point, we see group learning as like the norm. We send our kids to school. We send them out with one teacher and a whole group of classmates. And so our fear is on the other side. What is happening to our children if all of their learning is being done at home? If I am the person providing all of their socialization and stimulation? So the good news is that as humans, we will continue to adapt and we will learn things differently, but not worse. And in fact, you are probably already seeing that your kids have learned how to adapt to this. They may not be excelling in school, but they may have, if your children are anything like our nephews and nieces in my family, they have suddenly become technological geniuses. Even the youngest children in my family can do more with the computer than I can today. I just give it over to my nieces and nephews and I'm like, can you make this work? I need to update my website. Yep, I got that. Let me just take care of that for you. And that's sort of the amazingness. Yes, Donna.
I just wanted to share with you a comment from Marigold in the chat that was really related to what you were talking about.
Perfect.
My children rely on me and dad primarily for all their needs, their socialization, their learning, their activities, their everything, and it's exhausting.
Oh, it is exhausting. Did you say that was Marigold who said that?
That was Marigold, correct.
Yeah, thank you, Marigold. So you can probably see this bullet point down here at the bottom that says adequate social stimulation is actually just one caregiver and a small support group. Adequate is not the same as like ideal. Ideally, we would have a big support group and many caregivers, but you are doing enough just to, bless you, Sandy, you are doing enough just to be there with your kids right now. And that support group is really key. And I think that support group speaks to Marigold. It's you as the caregiver having somebody that you can go to. At the end of the day, if I can call Donna and say, oh my God, I just need 5 minutes of human conversation with grownups. Can we talk about movies or how difficult it was to have all of this going on simultaneously during the day? You feel supported, which means that you're going to be able to take that. Your brain is kind of coming back online so that you can go and reconnect with your family. So you having your supports is critical to your children having their supports. And I hope that part of your supports are telling you being exhausted, not having the bandwidth to do one more activity or get your kids through one more synchronous learning day is totally normal and absolutely fine. Can you switch it for me?
Yes, I was waiting for your cue.
Thank you. Okay, so we just spent a lot of energy talking about all of these stressors, all of these pebbles in the pool. So I'm going to shift gears for a moment and I'm going to invite you all to unmute yourselves. You don't have to turn on your camera if you don't want to, but unmute yourselves and shout it out. And there's not a wrong answer. Tell me what you see in this slide.
Purple dot.
Purple dot. Thank you. Absolutely. Does anybody see anything else other than the purple dot? It's not a trick question.
Beach
White
ball.
background.
White background. And I heard, Miguel, was that you who said beach ball?
Yeah. Or
words-
exercise
I want to
goal.
hang out with you. You're dreaming of the beach. I love it.
The words, what do you
Happy
see?
Cinco de Mayo.
The words, what do you see? Yes, absolutely. So this really isn't a trick slide, but it is very, I would say that 90% of the time when we show this, the first thing people see is the purple dot. Nobody has ever said they see a beach ball, and now that's what I'm going to be looking for from now until the end of time. But yes, the purple dot. In this example, the purple dot are all of those fears and worries and concerns that we just talked about. It's what is not going well. And the good news is, if that's what you saw, you are probably human, because this is what we are wired to do as humans. We are wired to look for the danger, the threat, what is not going well, because that's how we have survived. We are, if we know what the problem is, then we are ready to fix it, but we can't fix what we don't know about. The problem with only seeing the purple dot is that you miss out on that whole background behind it, which on this slide is white, but is usually not white. We miss out on all of the things that are going well, all of the richness, all of the context that's happening, even when that purple dot is gigantic. And the closer we look at what's going wrong, the closer we look at that purple dot, the harder it is for us to see the background around it. So we don't even see that there's any context, there's any goodness happening. It's just catastrophe all the time. I can speak for myself. Those first few weeks after the shutdown, when the pandemic was brand new, I felt like I couldn't breathe. This house that is super comfortable and that I actually love being in felt like a prison for me. I was surrounded by my books and I didn't want to read them. There was still a sidewalk that I could walk down with my dog, and I just felt like I'm trapped inside my house and I can't even open the door. I was staring super hard at that purple dot, and I know that many of you were as well. Luckily, slowly over time, I started to back up so that I could see there's a little bit of background behind the dot. I can see that I am still able to work. Yes, it's from home, but I'm working. I was able to see that the people in my family are safe. They are maybe miserable because they're all trapped inside with me, but they're safe. And the more I could see what was going well, the easier it was for me to take one more step back and one more step until I was really seeing the whole background that the purple dot was a part of. And here is the truth of the matter is, when you change what you are looking at, the things you are looking at change. So the moment I could see the purple dot as part of a bigger situation, then I could see it as, oh, this is really a challenge. I wonder how I can adapt to this challenge. What can I do to support other people around me? The scientists who were building that vaccine really saw it as, oh, this is an opportunity for me to do some really cool science with a lot of other people. I don't know any of them. I hope that's what they were saying. I hope that it was an exciting learning possibility for them. I know that it is an opportunity and an invitation for you all to change what you are looking at. So Donna mentioned that we were going to talk a little bit about the nurtured heart approach, which really is probably my new favorite thing to talk about with families. I first was introduced to the nurtured heart approach during the pandemic at a time when I needed a little bit of hope. I was focused on that dot a lot, and the nurtured heart approach has given me some language for reframing what I'm looking at. So we're offering it to you today so that you have some concrete tools. You can walk away from this at 1:30 with 3 beginning steps. And here they are. There's no secrets. 1, absolutely no. I refuse to energize negativity. 2, absolutely yes. I will relentlessly create and energize positivity and success. And we're going to break these down a little bit. And then the third one is absolutely clear. I will be absolutely clear with my boundaries, rules, and consequences. So let's dive in a little bit. Managing conflict. How many of you guys would say that conflict has increased in your homes during the pandemic? Yeah, I know it has in mine. Absolutely. So here's the thing. Was there a question? I just want to make sure that I'm not missing it. Okay. Sounded like maybe there was. So one of the ways to manage conflict is actually to take a step back before the conflict has really even started and to just recognize what is going on around you and to recognize what's going well. It's really easy. I can think about when there's conflict at my house, it's usually around who is going to do the dishes or clean the bathroom, because it seems like now that we're home all the time, there are a lot more chores to be done and no more time to do them. So it would be really easy to say, I see that you aren't doing the chores, that you're not doing your homework, that you are speaking disrespectfully. So absolutely no gives you an opportunity to recognize what's going well. Can you focus on what's going on around you? For example, I see that Miguel, you have your camera on, which is really awesome. It helps me feel connected to you. I see that you are looking at the screen. You could be back there. I see all those books behind you and I really want to get into them. You could be back there reading your books while this is sort of playing on in the background. You smile when I'm talking to you. It really helps me feel connected. I don't even know you. And now I feel like I've got this great connection to you. So taking just a moment to observe with words what's going on in your house really can do a lot to help your kids feel connected to you and can help you feel connected to your kids. And that connection can really slow down or even decrease the conflict that's happening. You are choosing, I am not going to energize the negative or to focus on what's going wrong. It may be that nobody has cleaned the toilets in 3 months, but I can take 30 seconds to recognize that everybody is sitting in the living room, and for this 30 seconds, everybody is reading their books together. And then to absolutely, yes, I will really be relentless with focusing on what's going well. Like seeing Megan and Ellen and Eva and Marigold. I get to see all of your faces, and that's amazing. And then the third one, absolutely clear. Okay, confession time. I have never played basketball in my life. Yes, there is a basketball in the corner of my office, but it is not mine. And you probably don't want to recruit me for any kind of basketball team, which is maybe why this example is easy for me to share, because I'm not getting hung up in what is right or what is wrong. I do know that there on a basketball court, there are lines and everybody knows what those lines mean. There is an out of bounds where people stand and watch and cheer, and there is an inbounds where the game is happening. And players know what those lines mean too. And so on the court, players run up and down, and I'm pretty sure they dribble the ball and pass it back and forth. And I definitely know that the goal is to get the ball in the hoop. And you don't see, and the ref runs up and down with them, but what you never see is the ref saying, watch out, Ellen, watch out, you're getting pretty close to the out of bounds area, 2 more steps to the left and you're going to be out of bounds. You don't see that. The players automatically know. And when Miguel like jostles Ellen because he's trying to get in line and Ellen falls out of bounds, the ref blows the whistle, Ellen has to give the ball over, and the game continues. There isn't this pause where the ref says, Ellen, what were you doing? I told you 500 times not to step out of bounds. And Ellen doesn't say, but you should just give me a break. It was the first time I was out of bounds for the entire game. Give me the ball back, give me another chance. And if I do it again, then we can have this consequence. There is no negotiation. So what is really magical about this is that before the game ever got started, the rules were super clear and everybody knew them. And the consequences for those rules were very clear and everybody knew them as well. So my invitation to you is to think about something that some area in your life where you can set up a super clear rule for you and your kids who are spending all of this time at home together. And a super clear consequence. I don't recommend like a whole list of rules because that would be really advanced for all of us, myself included. But think about one rule, like maybe the rule is no video games during school hours. That would be one that I would like my nephews to have. And then a consequence of, you can decide what consequence works for you. Then the idea is to let your energy focus on any time they are actually succeeding at following that rule. So, hey, I saw that for the first hour of school, you were not on your video games, even though you could be. And if, that's the 1 hour that they're not on video games, that is okay. So, all right, the reset. You guys have been very generous with letting us know what is resonating for you. And all of you have said, yes, there have been times that my lid has been flipped. Absolutely. The reset is a really great tool for helping you just to recognize that. It's great for you and it's great for your kids, because if your lid is flipped, their lids are flipped. And if their lids are flipped, your lid is flipped. So a reset is meant to be brief. It's the whistle that the ref blows. It's not a long lecture. And it's an opportunity for you to recognize that, oh, I need to take a moment so that then I can go back to recognizing the rules not broken, to recognizing the white field beyond the purple dot. So it's not, the whole idea behind all of these tools isn't that you give yourself a hard time every time you recognize I'm focusing on that purple dot, but that you notice, oh, the pandemic and school and all of the increased difficulty of trying to work from home have really been taking up all of my eyesight right now. The reset just gives me an opportunity to step back for one moment. It's really just a pause. I think that you have probably picked up on this during our time together today, but kids, a big part of being a parent to children is being able to tolerate your kids' big feelings. And right now, their feelings are gigantic. And before you can do that, a big part of being a grown-up is learning how to tolerate your own feelings. And right now, ours are really big. And so what I would say is spend some extra time holding your own feelings of overwhelm and fear and allowing those to be okay feelings. Because if once you can learn how to accept your own, then it will be a little bit easier to help your kids accept theirs.
Awesome. Thanks, Juliet. Any thoughts or comments before we shift gears a little bit? Everybody doing okay? Head nod, thumbs up.
Oh no, there was a basketball referee in the audience this whole time. Miguel, I hope
great.
I haven't just slaughtered that example.
Hopefully not. Hopefully not. So what we'd like to spend the next few minutes doing is, as Juliet was kind of leading into this and thinking about caregivers and caregivers taking good care of themselves, right? Noticing what your experience is. Notice when you're flipping your lid. Notice that how that's impacting your well-being, how it's impacting your behavior, how it's impacting your responses. Part of what is important is really caregivers taking good care of themselves. Now, all of you probably recall a time when we were on planes more frequently. When you get on the plane and you have all your stuff and you're, getting your AirPods out and you're pulling your laptop where you need it, you got your book, you got your snacks. And all the meantime, while you're doing that, you have the flight attendant that's talking, right? None of us really pay a lot of attention to them, sadly, but they have the thing that they have to do. This day I decided I was going to pay attention to the flight attendant. And she was talking about the oxygen masks that might drop from the top of the, the little roof thing if the cabin pressure changes. And they very explicitly say every time, which I've listened every time since I really paid close attention that first time, They say when the oxygen masks fall, put it on yourself first and then put it on your children if you're with kids, right? Or someone that needs extra assistance. Put it on yourself first. And at first that's like, well, gosh, that's selfish, right? You know, I'd lay myself across the railroad for my kids. How can I put the oxygen on myself first? I got to take care of my kids first. That's your like natural instinct. But the reality behind that is very true. If you don't have oxygen, if you don't take care of yourself first, you are not going to be able to take care of your kids. You are not going to be able to take care of whoever needs you in that regard. Think about pandemic, right? I think it was Marigold that was talking about being everything for her kids, right? All of it. You are not really going to be able to do that in the long run if you don't have any oxygen, you don't have any fuel, you haven't replenished yourself and taken good care of yourself so that you have it to give. We talk all the time about you can't give what you don't have, can't give what you didn't get, right? So it's important we want to invite you all to really be thoughtful about ways that you can take good care of yourself, put the oxygen on yourself first, and then assist and support those that you're caring for in your homes. It's not selfish, honestly, it's reality. Like you can't do it in the long run without taking good care of yourself first. And Juliet, do you feel okay if I skip a little bit ahead to some of the ideas?
Absolutely.
Okay. So we talked about flip your lid and kind of noticing when that's happening. And the reality is it's happening a lot. We are all flipping our lids consistently on a regular basis throughout the day as a normal part of our human experience, but also in addition with these added layers of COVID. There's so much unpredictability, so much lack of control. When we were talking about school before we started in the chat, right? Are they going back? Are they not going back? What is it going to look like? What's my kid going to be exposed to? Do I have the vaccine? Do I not have the vaccine? You know, how are they going to do lunch? Like, how are my kids going to get to school? What is transportation going to look like? Are they going to have buses? If they do have buses, what's going to happen, right? There's all of these added layers that contribute to us flipping our lid pretty consistently, whether you're a parent or otherwise. So what we thought might be helpful for you is we included in the handout packet a handout that's called Education and Mental Health During COVID. And it's really, I'm looking at the summary here just to give you, I'm not going to go into it in depth. I just wanted to share with you what it is and let you know you have it. They did a survey of 1,100 families, 2,300 kids were represented. And they just really talked about caregivers about their experiences. How do caregivers feel their kids are doing in school? 49% feel they were doing worse than expected. They talked to caregivers about their biggest challenges, balancing school and work time, meeting spatial education needs, the technology. There's a huge area where people are just flipping their lids like, I don't know how to work it. I don't know what to do. I can't get on Zoom. I can't get on Google Meets. What platform are they using? All of these stressors and how caregivers are managing that, which has, according to this survey, led to increased behavioral health symptoms in caregivers associated with all these stressors that they're dealing with at home and at work. So I think point around that is really we want to normalize what you're experiencing is okay. It makes sense. Noticing it, paying attention to it, not beating yourself up over it, right? Not hitting you with a stick because you're having a hard time. This is a hard time. So really focusing on, okay, this is hard. I'm flipping my lid. What can I do to help take care of myself under these circumstances?
Mhm.
And that's what we're hoping to emphasize in the next few slides and the handouts that we shared with you that were sent a little bit earlier. So
And
go ahead, Juliet.
we gave a variety of handouts because each of you are different. You're unique. At the end of the day, we are inviting you to find things that are meaningful for you, things that restore you, reset you, give you that pause so that you're not just looking at that giant purple dot of all the things that are going wrong, and renew you, give you new energy and build up that sense of life is meaningful. I can adapt and be innovative so that you are resilient.
Absolutely. Restore you, reset you, renew you. And so we're just going to go briefly over some of the handouts we sent you. I didn't include this one specifically because I would invite you to get on the Sesame Street website There's tons of excellent resources for caregivers. If you just, Google Sesame Street communities, this is just one little sample about some opportunities that we can take for ourselves and for our kids in the home or otherwise, if you're working with kids too, that are just super simple grounding things in the body, using your senses, breathing. It's a huge one. Just taking time to breathe, playing, meditating, praying, anything that regulates you, regulates that lower part of the brain, pattern, repetitive, rhythmic. I'll visit that in a second. Taking a walk, stretching, getting outside. And then, of course, the social aspect of that, reaching out, human connection, really powerful in restoring and renewing. I mean, we're wired for human connection, so it's part of our DNA to connect with other human beings. We offered this one to you, and actually Juliet retyped it, so it's really pretty in the handout. We couldn't figure out exactly where we heisted it from, but we created the form for you with just some self-care tips, things that you could try. Maybe hang this on your refrigerator and try some of these things to renew and restore and reset you and your kids at home. Simple things. None of this has to be expensive or fancy, anything like that. Sometimes it's just getting outside, getting dirty. It's getting warmer, playing in the water, getting the hose out, right? Planting something, reaching out to someone, shooting a text, playing games. Juliet, did you say something? I'm sorry if I interrupted.
I didn't say something. Oh, gardening, great one, Anime. I was going to say that one that I have been recommending recently is you can get free YouTube videos of yoga, all different kinds of introduction to yoga, yoga in your chair. And one of the ones that I have recently learned more about is what's called laughter yoga, which gets two or three really areas on that chart at the same time, because you are laughing, which we know is so good for releasing that serotonin and just sort of washing our brain in happiness hormones. You are moving mostly your face, but also your lungs and all of that good movement from like here up. And then if you add in some meditation, there's the spiritual component. So one 20-minute yoga video can hit 3 different areas on that self-care checklist.
Absolutely. Great point, Juliet. Here's some other ideas, just another little graphic. I love the one that says cuddle or play with your pet. I think that's one of the silver linings from working at home is you have access to your pets and your furry friends that you can tap into at any moment when you need to rejuice or restore. Stepping outside, eating healthier, throwing a ball back and forth, getting a hug from your kids, a little cuddle time, music. I had music playing when we first started, so that's another really powerful way to rejuvenate, to regulate. So we've offered this one to you all too, so you have that little graphic. This is another one that I really liked. I found this early on when the pandemic hit, and we sent this to you all too. I like how it has little bursts of regulation opportunities, right? To ground us, to reset, a 30 to 60-second fill up, a 10 to 30-minute fill up, and then, an hour or longer activities that we can use.
So one of the things that we hear a lot is, I don't have time to take care of myself. Didn't you just hear that my house is on fire and I'm trapped inside of it? The thing that's really great about this handout is you can do it in 30 seconds. 30 seconds is enough to do something to take care of yourself. And I love that it says avoid a meltdown, preventatively avoid a meltdown. So if you can do this when everything is going well, maybe your lid doesn't get flipped. Maybe the kids' lids don't get flipped.
Exactly. And I think it's, I think you would agree, Juliet, it's just noticing that you need something and then consciously making the time and the effort to do it. 30 seconds, right? When you think about it like that, it's no time at all. Taking a few breaths. Sometimes I really get so in the zone that I'm like, I don't even think about breathing. And just taking the time to take a few breaths can really restore and rejuvenate in a really quick and easy way.
And so my favorite reset is on here in the 30 to 60-second fill-up list. It's going outside. When I'm in the middle of a big meltdown, like risk of flipping my lid at home, I'll just take myself right outside, open that sliding glass door and go stand in the backyard for 30 seconds.
And come right back in, restored and ready to re-engage. And this is all, I mean, it comes down to brain science, right? These are all hormones in our brain that are activated and can help us feel better, can restore, rejuvenate, reset us, and different ways to think about it in association with those hormones in our brain. The reward system, you know, we feel good when we complete a task, when we feel good when we eat well, when we celebrate little successes, when we meditate, we run, get in the sun, just like Juliet mentioned. Playing with our dog, pets, that's the, you know, the love hormone, oxytocin. Doing something nice for someone, just consciously walking around, if you're in the grocery store or something, and just purposely saying, hey, nice mask, how are you today, right? All those little things give us these little bursts of hormone in our brain that actually elevate how we feel. Kindness is contagious. So sharing that actually helps us feel better also. Laughter. I'm not a big fan of dark chocolate, but I've heard people really love
It's
dark
delicious.
chocolate. I see some people smiling already. So it works, right? Lights up that and draw our kind of biological endorphins and anesthetic that we opioids, natural opioids. Breath, we talked about breathing just very briefly. I don't think we'll spend too much time on that. I'd like to save a few minutes for questions. Does that sound okay with you, Juliet? But I don't, anybody have one of these? An Apple Watch that tells you to breathe? You have the app that says breathe. Taking advantage of that is, it seems like a small thing, but it can be really helpful. I don't know how many times I ignore it. I'm notorious from like, stop telling me what to do, Suri. But when I take a minute to breathe, it is actually quite powerful. Looking at nature
actually,
scenes.
yeah,
ahead,
and I was
Juliet.
just going to say that we tend to be breath holders, our society today. I can't tell you how many times a day I notice that I've been sitting at my computer typing, holding my breath. That's actually what you're doing, is holding on to your stress. Anytime you notice that, if you can just let it all out and take a big breath in, you are signaling to your brain that it is safe and you can move on.
Absolutely. We noticed too, when we were just gathering together, a lot of people have really cool virtual backgrounds. And that is really powerful, right? Looking at nature scenes, having images of nature, things that bring up memories for you, positive memories for you, can be really powerful just to have in your line of view, right? In your sight, on your screensaver or on your virtual background. Those are all little tiny things that really do help us feel better. Now, anything patterned, repetitive, rhythmic, or relational have the potential to regulate that stress response system that we were talking about in the beginning. Anything pattern, repetitive, rhythmic, relational. Drumming, movement, dance, singing, walking, breathing, gum chewing, tossing a ball back and forth, any of those things are potentially pattern, repetitive, and rhythmic, and really serve to regulate our stress response system. It's really powerful and very quick. We just need little doses of this that can really help us in those moments when we feel like we flipped our lid or we're about to flip our lid. And then, of course, relational is the other component of that. We are regulated by human connection, human relationship. Again, why it's so powerful for us to see each other, even if we're virtual. We're wired for connection, so it helps really calm and quell our stress response system, helps us feel safe when we're in connection with other human beings. So reaching out, even if it's virtual, with friends, family, coworkers, your neighbors, anything that we can do to enhance that relational connection now that we're virtual has the potential to be really powerful in just helping us feel better and helping us not flip our lid. The more you can get outside in nature, the more you can move. Any sort of physical activity is going to help with this regulation, prevent us from flipping our lid, help us reset and restore. And I think no more powerful or even more powerful than all of those is relationship. There is no greater gift than a relationship. This comes from the work of Dr. Bruce Perry. I heard him say it and I jotted it down on a Post-it note and then took a picture of it because it was that powerful, right? There's no greater gift than a relationship. And we all have that gift to be able to offer everyone and to ourselves, honestly, right? Taking good care of yourself is a part of that. Juliet, I'm going to jump to gratitude really quickly. Is that okay?
Absolutely.
Okay with that? So something that I think Juliet would agree, and I would imagine a lot of you would too, is that I find myself throughout this whole process moving from, frustration and desperation and fear and loss to gratitude, and like this continual movement back and forth. Like, oh my gosh, this is so horrible. We have to work from home and I'm so tired and it feels like one long day and I can't look at a computer screen anymore. And then I think, oh, I'm so grateful I have a job. I'm so grateful that we can still serve kids and families. I'm so grateful that we have technology that can pull us together, right? And then I get like, oh, but this sucks. And then, but I'm so grateful. And anybody relate where you're kind of moving between all of those two? Oh, this is so horrible, but I haven't lost anyone to COVID. Like nobody's died in my family related to COVID. I'm so grateful for that. But this sucks, right? And when am I going to get the vaccine? And like, it's this constant like movement between gratitude and desperation, right? And I get it. I think that's a human condition, right? Just noticing that that's happening and honoring and recognizing whatever your feelings and experiences are on both sides of that, or in anywhere in between. But we do know that gratitude and coming back to gratitude can be very powerful in restoring us and renewing us and resetting us when we're able to see, beyond the purple dot, right? The dot is all this other stuff, the hard stuff. And the gratitude is all that white space behind the purple dot or around the purple dot. So the more we can come back to that, the more it helps really feed and fuel and help us develop this sense of resilience around all of this. Acceptance of what is, somehow and somewhere there, this is meaningful. Where's the silver lining? Gratitude, right? And then this ability to roll and bounce back is ultimately, I think, what we are all developing our resiliency muscles in the context of our pandemic experience, whether you're a parent or a teacher or a support person, or we're working with kids and families, whatever it might be. We're definitely developing those resiliency muscles. Did you want to add anything, Juliet, to that?
No, I think you have closed it beautifully. We have a few minutes left and we wanted to leave room for you guys to ask questions, or if you want to tell us a little bit about what this year has been like for you, we would love to hear it.
I'll stop share and just say, be safe, be kind, and hang on. That's been a mantra that we've been trying to hold on to. There we go. Now we can see everyone. Any comments, questions, concerns, thoughts?
This is so helpful. Thank you so much. I'm hiding in a laundry room right now and nursing one baby, and my other baby is running around demolishing the house, I'm sure. But I always tell my husband, I feel like I'm in One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, but I don't know if I'm Nurse Ratched or if I'm Jack Nicholson. But Nurse Ratched combs her hair, so I don't know which. But this was so helpful because I realized I've got a 1 and a 3-year-old. And so much of I live like this, like it takes one thing to be like, I told you a million times. And it's like, not, they haven't done it in like a week or something. That's huge. That visual for me is huge. And I realized that so much of my freak out is fear that they're going to hurt themselves, fear that my 3-year-old's going to smother my 1-year-old, like these crazy things that are rooted in trauma, like history of, things we can't control, things. So I didn't realize, like intellectually, when I can think, I know that those kinds of things affect us, but I hadn't even thought about that why I'm like this all the time. I hadn't even thought of that.
That's it. So we invite you, Mia, to do something to start to take care of yourself, right? To find those opportunities. And it may not be easy, but these little moments, right? 30 to 60 seconds.
Even if it's hiding out in the linen closet.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Your 3-year-old, they might be able to do a little bit of damage in a minute, 30 to 60 seconds, but not much, right? You're just those minutes to step outside, take some breaths, eat some dark chocolate if that's your thing. Whatever that is to restore and rejuvenate is just, it's critical for survival, right? It's critical.
Yes.
Thank you. This was
Thanks,
really
Mia,
amazing.
for sharing that. I appreciate it.
Thanks.
Anna Mae likes your background too, Mia.
And you're right. It made me happy when I did it. This is my
It
sister's art,
is.
and I just did it. I was like, oh my God, I'm so happy now. It
It-
felt good.
That's it exactly. These little things, really powerful.
Absolutely.
Thanks, Anime.
Anna Mae has a great background too.
Mm-hmm. You know, one other thing that we didn't say exactly, but I hear you guys, oh my God, look at me as little baby, her
Oh my
cherub.
gosh, so cute.
Now I am totally lost. All I can think of is, oh, that sweet baby.
And the baby's got milk drunk right now.
Yes.
Like that. Oh, this is the
Yeah,
best world
she's got
ever.
yeah, she knows the power of the 4 drugs.
Exactly. Exactly.
Absolutely. Thanks,
Milk drunk.
Kathleen. I was just gonna say, you know, we have talked a lot about what this has been like for our children, what this has been like for ourselves. I would say one thing you could do is extend it out to people you come in contact with during the day, whether it be your colleagues, students you're working with, your spouse. Their lids are getting flipped pretty regularly too.
Mhm.
You know, I think the compassion goes along with the gratitude.
Absolutely.
That's how we are in relationship with each other, and that's how we will get through this. Thank you so much, everybody, for spending your lunch hour with us. I hope
Great.
this was meaningful for you. It was definitely meaningful for us. And this was a really fun way to spend a Friday afternoon before spring break.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Donna and Juliet. Thank you for everyone who is able to attend. And thank you for the people that are going to watch this later, because we'll be sharing it. And thank you for letting us do that and for providing the resources, which we'll also be posting on our website. So
Awesome.
everyone take care and take care of yourselves and have a good weekend.
Yes.
Good to see all of you. Great to meet you. Thank you again so much for your time and attention.
Bye. Thank you so much.
Appreciate it. Thank you.